Hello, thanks for being in a new video. This time I have first impressions of the Vivo V40. Let's get started. And this device is part of the mid-range of this manufacturer, but specifically we could categorize it in the upper mid-range. Remember that Vivo has a Y series, which is for the entry-level series. At the higher numbers it will be a bit mid-range, but this V series is one of the more interesting ones because it's very well balanced. And in this case, I'm impressed that they've integrated the collaboration with 6 in the mid-range. If you don't know the brand very well, let me tell you that their collaboration with 6 has been going on for quite a few years. 6 is one of the leading exponents in terms of lenses. So in this case, they have worked especially on the portrait mode, which we'll talk about in a moment. But their biggest exponent is the Vivo X100 Ultra. It can easily be placed in the top 3 of the best devices in photography this year. So definitely that Vivo has a ton of experience in terms of photography to date. And it's very interesting as I tell you that they have integrated their collaboration with 6 from this mid-range device. But before we talk specifically about portrait photography, how about we take a first look at it? It is confirmed that it will arrive in Mexico and many other Latin American countries. We will simply have to wait little by little to know its official price. So when there is the launch, I will surely have the unboxing and review for you. For now, let's take an initial look. Well, as usual, let's quickly look at the design where it definitely gets to stand out because of the curved screen. It's an extremely slim device. Vivo almost always makes these kinds of very stylish designs. Specifically, it is 7.58 millimeters thick and weighs 190 grams. In fact, the back cover also has this curvature to make it a pretty comfortable grip, and as you realize, the camera module is quite original. I like this proposal in a smartphone market saturated with devices that look very similar. I think this one finds a good identity gap, and that will distinguish it. And obviously it also incorporates sections very focused on portrait. Remember that it integrates the aura light, which is not just a simple flash, but as you notice, it comes with a round shape, so that it also gives a special touch to portraits in the eye area. In fact, notice that in the camera interface, it comes with this area where you can set the aura light. In fact, you could regulate its temperature. Notice that in this case, it projects a reddish light, or it can also be a slightly cooler light. So depending on what you want to achieve, you can set up this lighting in different ways. It's definitely an attractive point that you don't find on other smartphones. And again, I'm glad that Vivo is having this touch of originality, not only in design, but also by incorporating this light. But to top it off with the design, I should point out that it has the IP68 level of water and dust resistance. So even if it falls into the water, it will have a very high chance of surviving. Vivo also highlights that it has a kind of structure that cushions falls. So another highlight. The screen is also on par with what we would expect. In fact, a little bit above what we would expect because it's an AMOLED panel with Full HD resolution. Again, it is an element where it starts to differentiate itself in a market quite full of devices with Full HD screens. In this case, it goes a step further. Although by default it comes configured in Full HD, but you can raise the resolution. The difference is honestly not that much, but again it goes a small step further to begin to differentiate itself. Also, it's a display that has a refresh rate of about 25 Hz, so it's definitely going to be very good. This device also integrates stereo sound, so we find the main speaker on the bottom, the secondary speaker in the earpiece area for calls, and I must say it sounds good. Fortunately, this time they didn't sacrifice that aspect that in other models they had sacrificed and that I had criticized. So now it is very good in sound, although it does not have a headphone jack, but that is to be expected in a device of this category. In this case, it has two 50-megapixel cameras, it's a wide-angle camera and an ultra-wide-angle camera. It is definitely an interesting addition, although it is curious that they do not integrate a telephoto camera, considering that it is going to be a device very focused on portraits. However, not incorporating a telephoto camera does not mean that it is not capable of giving you a telephoto perspective, as it notes that within the portrait mode. There is something that I loved, and that is that in this area you could select the lens that you are going to simulate. Remember that this is all in collaboration with Zeiss, so they've come up with something spectacular. For example, at 24 millimeters, obviously we're talking about the normal main camera setting, but note that you can work at a 35mm setting with a little bit more zoom that gives you a little bit more of a professional perspective. But the setting I personally like the most is the 50mm setting, with which you could achieve much more professional portraits of different styles. But what still strikes me the most is that in this area where you can set the simulated aperture, you can also select the style of blur that it's applying, and this, as I say, they worked very closely with Zeiss, so that these blur effects can look as natural as possible, similar to different styles of lens that you might use on a professional camera. So you're looking at some portrait pictures that I took with this device in various tests that we were doing, and it definitely looks like a very nice result in all of them. I have no doubt that's going to be one of its most attractive points. So it has a lot of focus on portraiture. As I was anticipating, the ring light also helps you to have another style of portraits, so you have a lot of capabilities. It doesn't just take a portrait with the main camera and that's it, but it lets you have different perspectives of focal lengths, different blur effects, and different styles with the aura light. So we confirm that in terms of portrait, this is possibly one of the most advanced devices in the range. And also in the front camera, we will find some of the most advanced of the range. And also in the front camera, we will find some of the most advanced in the range. And with autofocus, so again, we have a lot of capabilities. Note that for starters, it has a wide angle camera, so we have a lot of space around us to find the perfect frame. But having a high resolution sensor, it would also allow us to zoom in up to 2x zoom. And because it has autofocus, even if you zoom in to notice the tiniest details of your face, you could focus it perfectly to capture it. So it has very good front portrait photography capabilities as well. And what I liked is that they also incorporate this same collaboration with 6 that we were seeing in the rear system portrait here in the front camera. So you could get to have very attractive portrait photography as well. Again, you're looking at some examples that I took now with the front camera, and I repeat, the result, honestly, that is very nice with all the styles that you can come up with, specifically selecting the bokeh effect that you want in collaboration with 6. And by the way, something that we had already noticed on several Vivo devices, they have a super advanced portrait system in terms of facial beauty. So you can enhance absolutely everything about your face. Personally, I always like to leave it without any processing on the face, but if you need it, there it is available for you to change the style of your face. In fact, it also has some makeup options that you could enclose on your face. And also some postures. If you sometimes run out of ideas, remember that here you can see some options of how to put and arrange your hand to get the best out of it. For video recording, the front camera does allow us to adjust in 4K, something that is very good in conjunction with the autofocus. And on the back, we're also going to find the 4K setting, albeit at 30 frames per second, but for a mid-range device, it's very good. Consider that also the ultra-wide camera can record in 4K at 30 frames per second, which is something unusual in devices of this price. And it also considers that it does allow us to switch between the main camera and the ultra-wide camera while we are recording, something that few devices allow. It also integrates a special stabilization mode, so it can definitely give us a touch of the experience that we would find in a flagship, and that is something very important. Consider also that despite being a thin and light device, it has a battery of 5,500 milliamps. Again, it's a step up from what we see in the range currently, which is stuck at 5,000 milliamps. It's definitely a point that could stand out, and it supports 80-watt charging. In addition, the charger will be included in the box. And finally, it comes with the Snapdragon 7 Gen 3, a processor that can definitely get to give us a good performance. In addition, it comes with other tools to enhance the gaming experience. It comes with 12 GB of RAM and 512 GB of storage. Again, bringing the experience of a flagship device to a mid-range device. Definitely a lot to keep an eye on with this device. Obviously, at this point, I don't know the price yet, so I wouldn't be able to evaluate it further. But as first impressions, it gives me the feeling of being a pretty complete device. For now, this has been all for this video. I hope you liked it. If you did, you know you can let me know, and see you next time.